War Eagle! Welcome to the Auburn Tigers football podcast. Here are your hosts, Brett Mason and Jamie Thomas.
All right, here we go with the Tigers and Tide podcast, Auburn football edition. I am your host, Brett Mason, my co-host, Jamie Thomas, who apparently took a trip to Mississippi this weekend, is not back today, so you're just stuck with me. We're trying a new thing where we're going to be using this Blab software, if you're not familiar with that, to host our podcast for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is so we can actually make a video version of the podcast. So if you're a subscriber on the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or YouTube, you will still continue to get the podcast like normal. All you have to do is search for Tigers and Tide. If you have downloaded our free iOS or Android apps that you can get your respective app stores just by searching for Tigers and Tide, all that'll be the same as well. The only difference is now on Sunday nights, the show will be live on Blab. Will be a video version of, obviously, you'll have me. When Jamie's back, you'll have both of us, and then we'll have the opportunity to bring in a couple of guests as well. So if you're hanging out in the chat and you got something you want to say, you got a question, and you have headphones, you got to have some headphones. I know if you're using iOS, just the regular earbuds with the mic built in works fine. Because if you don't have the headphones, the sound will come through your speakers, and we'll get the reverb and the mix through and all that stuff. So you got to have some headphones. Other than that, you can come in and join us at any given time. And of course, you can always just chat in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on the chat and answer your questions there as well. So I think it'll make the podcast a lot more fun. And then when we upload it to YouTube, users will actually start getting a video version of the podcast rather than it just being audio. And since that's what YouTube is all about, that kind of makes more sense as well. So all that being said, let's just jump into talking about some Auburn Tigers football. I'm going to try to cover this by myself as I can. First of all, I was very, very happy that we got our first SEC win of the season. I've seen some Auburn fans who don't seem all that grateful or excited to get our first SEC win, talking about how it was quote unquote, only over Kentucky and et cetera, et cetera. Well, when you've already lost SEC games this year and you finally get a win and it's on the road and it's against a much better Kentucky team than what we've been accustomed to in times past, and you see the improvements, especially on offense, I think you should probably be happier. Maybe not happy or super excited or thinking that all is well, but I think definitely you should be happier that the Tigers seem to be getting back on track, at least offensively. I'll tell you, defensively, there was still a lot of glaring issues. This defense has issues making tackles, especially open field tackles, first guy in to make the tackle. It's usually 3, 4, 5 guys before they get the job done. I see that happen a lot. And it's kind of frustrating because you see them doing some good things that are kind of wiped out because of the poor tackling. I can't tell you how many times you'll see, up front, they'll either on a blitzing scheme or they just get some penetration or for whatever. And we should have the ball carrier down in the backfield. Poor tackling leads to him actually getting into the second level because your blockers are tied up. Your guy that penetrates, which is the loose guy, doesn't make the tackle. So there's one less guy to make the stop as the runner advances now through that first level and getting into the second level. And so then you're busting off first down plays, 10 yards, 15 yards and longer. And so it's, as you're watching the game, you go from elation to dejection because you see the penetration, you see that he goes to wrap him up and he misses. And so what should have been a tackle for a loss winds up being a tackle for, or rather a missed tackle for a decent game, usually resulting in a first down, but at least good yardage. And so those issues on defense are glaring. I do think Auburn is other than that is pretty decent against the run. They certainly have had moments of looking decent, and I think this Kentucky game is an example of them looking decent. Not so great against the pass, though, and that continues to be a problem. Look, that's a Will Muschamp defense. He really expects guys to get the job done. He expects to be able to play man coverage. He expects you to not expect to have help, coming in over the middle or whatever, and you just get the job done. Now, the upside to that, and we talked about this in a previous podcast, is you see our defenders man up and be there to make the play, but just for whatever reason, not get the arm up, not get the head around. They're matching stride for stride or even beating the receiver, but just not having that, that last finishing move that's necessary. So I think that there's some good news there, and that I think that's teachable. The frustrating part is that we're now, we're halfway through the season. We still haven't seen that come to light. So I'm still a guy who has all the faith in the world in Will Muschamp. I mean, you got a lot of these players that were apparently taught poorly. Then you have the ones that were even doing well or in a new scheme. And then we got all the young guys, the freshmen in that were playing, is sometimes as many as 6 or 7 in on a particular set of downs. And, I don't care how talented you are as a freshman. It just takes a while. I mean, I think next year we're probably going to be in much better shape. I really think we will be, but we'll just have to wait and see. So let's talk about the offense in this Kentucky game. I tell you what, the coaches I thought were brilliant coming into the game. They had a plan, a bunch of new formations, a bunch of new schemes. A lot of stuff that I know Kentucky's never seen before because I've been watching all year and I haven't seen it. And so, and it worked. It worked pretty effectively. Gus was one of those guys who, it was called a spread, hurry up offense for a long time until you realize he really doesn't run the spread that much. They do a lot of compact formations with maybe one wide out or 2 wide outs sometimes. But they came into this Kentucky game stretching the field. I mean, they had four wide sets a lot early, brought in some new players to help make that possible. And I mean, that really stretched the field sideline to sideline. And I thought it gave them an advantage that we haven't seen yet this year. And I think it showed, because especially in the first half, boy, we're moving the ball nearly effortlessly. A big part of that was Chandler Cox, who, I think Chandler Cox is going to be a good back, and I think he's going to put on some bulk, put on some muscle, but, he obviously that isn't probably for him right now, but now as a receiver, I thought he did really well. If you look at some of those schemes and formations they did, especially when they loaded heavy on one side, maybe you had three wide outs on one side. And, they have those plays where you get little rubs or whatever. And then the outer perimeter blocking, he was huge for that. He was very effective at that. And they had a lot of those schemes that worked really well, which allowed Sean White, who I thought played pretty well, to be really effective in that kind of a passing game with those sweeps and those flip outs and those little things like that. And that was schemed really well. So you had the Kentucky defense stretched. You had the ability to confuse them a little bit. They were not allowed to stack up the box and be very concentrated inside, especially not in the first half. And it really was very effective. I was shocked at how effective. I was shocked that it was so different. And I don't know how many people noticed that. It was a much different offense in this game than what we've seen. Let's talk about Sean White. I mean, Sean White's the quarterback. This guy's the quarterback. Is he the greatest SEC quarterback ever? No. Could he be at some point? I don't know. You would think that his size may prevent him from being a full, complete, amazing quarterback. But, there's some small quarterbacks done well. You might remember a little guy named Nick Marshall, who was on the smaller size, especially in terms of height. But this guy makes good decisions. Now, the first game he played, we had where we're set to score, and he made the mistake and flung the interception. With the exception of that and a few other times, this guy's always making pretty good decisions. And that was something Jeremy Johnson couldn't do. And so you can't turn the ball over 2, 3, 4 times a game and win. You just can't, especially against an SEC opponent. And that's something Sean White has brought to the game even before this Kentucky game, was the lack of mistakes and the lack of turnovers, which has been huge for Auburn. Secondarily, he's been able to make stuff happen in the passing game and with his feet. Now, he's no Nick Marshall, but he can scoot, and I think what really sets him aside is his ability to recognize when it's time to run, and then he recognizes the lane and he recognizes what he's looking at. He has vision to be able to spot that and see here's the first down with my legs, or here's the easy 8-yard play with my legs. And then at the same time, he also has the ability to see when that's not there. He's thrown the ball away, which I've been very impressed with. He has taken some sacks, but he's made really good decisions with getting rid of the ball, rolling out of the pocket, getting rid of the ball without a grounding issue. He's made a lot of really good decisions, I thought. And so I think what Shaun White has brought to the Auburn Tigers is good decision-making, a very remarkable lack of turnovers and mistakes on his part. And then what we saw in this Kentucky game was actually the passing game starting to come into effect. And I think that was due to a couple of things. Malzahn and Lashley opening up the offense some for Shaun White. And then also I think probably the other part of that was him just getting better at reading defenses, feeling confident with his passes. And then also Ricardo Lewis being back at 100%. Now, Gus Malzahn said in the postgame press conference that this is probably the first game of the year where Ricardo Lewis was at a true 100%. And I think that was very noticeable. He made some big time plays. Now he made some bad decisions too, had some drop balls, but he was locked pretty much when it was needed. He was a lock, and we were able to see him pull down some big passes that would be hard for most receivers in the league to make. And he has that ability, and he's shown it in previous seasons, but I thought it was more on display this time. My final thoughts on this Kentucky game, because I like to look at the positives in that. There were a lot of positives. Look, there's still a lot of problems. We started out talking about defense, and I think there's issues there. But there were a lot of good things. This offensive line for Auburn was getting the job done. They were very physical. They were driving the defense off the line of scrimmage a lot. They were making it to where our running backs had an easy 3 yards before they ever had to worry about juking or contact or issues. I mean, they were just really driving downfield, and that was really, really good to see. These 2 and 3 yard pushes, we saw that a couple of times down on goal lines where I know there was that one rushing touchdown where Golson and I believe it was Kozan, maybe those guys in particular, where they just drove the defender in front of them nearly through the other end of the end zone. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but they just exploded and got the job done. Now, if you can get that with some quality running backs in the backfield, you're going to be able to do some things. And then when you have Shaun White bringing a respectable passing game to the table, this offense could turn out to be pretty good before the year is over. That being said, they still have a ways to go, and they're going to need some help from the defense. I'm going to credit the defense with getting the game clinching interception. I'll credit the defense for coming up big at certain times in the game. They certainly did. But overall, I think their effort by far was lackluster. And it's kind of concerning because if you think back, and this is the thing, once you see at the beginning of the year that nothing you thought is right, you kind of have to let those preconceptions go. But we don't want to, and it's hard for us to let them go. But the original thoughts were the offense is going to be fine, and they're going to put up numbers that are just incredible while Will Muschamp brings his defense along and gets some of these young players and this new defense implemented, everybody up to speed on it, and then you'll just see it get better and better and better. And halfway through the season and on, it should probably be even better. And you combine that with what was predicted to be a deadly offense, and Auburn the sky was the limit. Well, look, none of that came out to be true. The offense was horrible. Jeremy Johnson, just for whatever reason, just bad, just really bad. And I like that kid. I think he's got talent. I just think he's a head case, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if something got to him, but he had issues. So Now we see that the offense, I think, is moving in the right direction to be the best it can be. I would like for the offense to have more upside, but I think we need to be realistic about what the upside is. That being said, the upside is pretty darn good. It's not as probably going to be as good as we thought it was, but it does have a huge upside. The problem is the defense is regressing, I think, and probably not since the first half of the first game of the season against Louisville have we seen a defense that looked in any kind of a way like something that you would want to put on the field as an SEC team. Now, look, I hate to talk bad about kids in college. I've tried to be a person that doesn't do that. These are kids that are doing classes and their studies, and they have a lot of pressure on them. But look, they stepped into it, so you're going to have to take the heat to a certain degree. But ultimately, I try to always lay it at the feet of the coaches. It doesn't matter if you got kids who aren't buying in. It doesn't matter if you have kids that maybe don't have the right work ethic, or you have kids that have this or that, and you got young kids. A lot of freshmen. He's putting a lot of freshmen on the field on a lot of downs. That still, to me, comes back to the coach. You still put that on the coach. It's the coach's job to get them motivated. It's the coach's job to get them to buy in. It's the coach's job to get these guys up to speed faster. It's the coach's job to make sure that you see improvement from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4 to week 5 to week 6. And we haven't seen any of that, I don't think. I do think in some ways, I really think moving Casanova McKenzie to a little bit different role has been better. And we've seen him get some pressure on the quarterback and sacking situations. We've seen him penetrate the backfield, get some downs for a loss, which was something sorely needed. Montravius Adams, who can look just brilliant some games, and then some games you hardly hear his number called at all. But he was that way last year. And what do we attribute that to? I don't know. We're not privy to that. We're not privy to practices. We're not privy to what it's like on the sideline. We're not privy to what's being said. So, there's really no way for us to predict that. But I can say this: when he's good, it looks really good, and then he's just kind of flat sometimes, and I'm not sure why. So can the defense get better? Obviously, they can. I'm still convinced we have the best defensive mind in the game coaching for the Auburn Tigers. And that doesn't mean I won't change my mind, because you have the option to change your mind. Just because somebody was the best defensive mind in the game doesn't mean they can't lose it. Doesn't mean they can't lose their edge. Doesn't mean things can't happen. So, I reserve the right to change my opinion on that. But as of right now, I still believe we have the best defensive mind in the game. Why they're not getting it done and why we're not seeing progress, that I don't know. I just hope he knows. That's what we have to hope. We have to hope that he knows why, because until you figure out why, you can't fix it. And so that's the problem. Once you figure out why, you can fix it. I trust that he knows what's going on. I trust that he can fix it. Nevertheless, we'll see. Look, we're looking ahead to playing Arkansas. The records are flipped. Auburn is 4-2 now. Arkansas is 2-4, and still Arkansas, I think, is a 5.5-point favorite in this game. It is on the road. We'll be heading into a hostile environment. Any road SEC game is difficult to win. And I don't care how good your team is or how poor you think the other team is. We've seen that notoriously happen. That's one of the pitfalls of being in the SEC. There's great upside to that. It launches you to where you need to be if you do well. But it also can chew you up and spit you out. Look, I think Arkansas is struggling in a lot of areas. I think an Auburn team that can take the pluses of their offensive success against Kentucky and build on that so that it's even better in the Arkansas game gives me hope. And defensively, I really don't know. I don't think there's a lot more switching around he can do with personnel. I don't think he can give any more freshmen shots at responsibilities than he's already given. So it's just a matter of it clicking. I don't know if the game still needs to slow down for them. You would think halfway through the season that would have happened to some degree for the many freshmen. On the other hand, your more seasoned veterans in there really need to step up. I think at times a couple of them have. I think Casanova McKenzie has really tried to be a leader. I think he's been somewhat successful at it sometimes. Other times, I think not so much. So, this defense needs to step up. The defense is better at stopping the run than it is the pass. I think that works in Auburn's favor a little bit. That being said, they're not that great at stopping the run, even though I think that's the better part of what they do. they're certainly not phenomenal at stopping the run. Arkansas, I think that's what you need to do against Arkansas. I think there's potential that they can. I'll tell you this, I don't think favoring Arkansas at 5.5 is probably all that accurate. I can see you favoring Arkansas by 3, some in that neighborhood, but it's going up. I think it started out at 3 or 4. It started out at 4, and then it went to 5, and then went to 5.5. A lot of that's controlled by betting. These sports books are trying to make a profit, so you continue to move the line to encourage people to bet on a different side, depending on what you need. But I certainly think it goes higher. It's definitely not accurate. I could see 3 points. 5.5, I think, is pushing it. I think Auburn definitely has a chance to win this game. And I think if we see an improved offense even slightly, and if we could just get some improvement on defense, I think we easily could win this game. We'll see. And it'd give us our second SEC win of the year, which is desperately needed for these Auburn Tigers. And, I think we'll just have to wait and see on that. Look, you need to like us on or follow us on Twitter. Our notifications for when we go live with this broadcast, so you can actually get in the chat room and chat with us, and we can actually bring you into the video with us as well. You'll get that notification via Twitter. Now, you also need to, I would tell you right now, to go ahead and download the Blab app, B-L-A-B. Just go search for B-L-A-B in the App Store for your phone. I understand the iOS version is better than the Android version, but there is a version for both phones. And then you can also just go to blab.im on your laptop or PC. And the only thing I said before, you're going to need headphones. Take the headphones. You'll need to stick them in. If you're using iOS, I know the earbuds that come with it have the little microphone built in here. That's all you need. Just pop them in, plug it into your phone if you're using your phone. And you'll see the option to join a seat. It'll say join. And, we'll decide at what point in the show we want to bring people in. But that's definitely something we would do, so you could be on the show with us. And it would be more than just me. This is kind of a test for me to do a show, but also kind of test how it's going to work and test how we're going to be able to get the video converted and edited for YouTube and all the many things I need to do to make that happen. So thanks for watching the show. If you're watching on YouTube, we had a few people watch it live. Michael Martineau, Ethan Queen. I can't see the other names. We had a few people watch the show live. And if you're watching it as a replay on YouTube or whatever, or you are now listening on many of our podcast places like iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Or obviously, if you're on the website listening at southeasternfootball.com, we appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed on any of those, whatever podcast you use, like Stitcher or iTunes or iHeart or whatever, just search for Tigers and Tide. You can download our free app in the App Store. That's Tigers and Tide. And look for us on YouTube, Tigers and Tide. That's easy to find. And thanks again. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. It means more than you know. We love talking about some Auburn football around here. And our next podcast, which will be live, I think, will be live on Blab, will be me and Jamie both talking about the Alabama success and their upcoming game as well. So I look forward to that.
Thanks for listening. Download our free iOS app. Just search for Tigers and Tide in the App Store. And subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. Just search for Tigers and Tide. And for the latest SEC news, log on to southeasternfootball.com.